So great to have you with us all across America and Canada and wherever you might be watching, courtesy of the show being available on YouTube, on the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. We appreciate you being here. Lot to do over the next 60 minutes, a very busy show. Thrilled to be joined by our friend David Aardsma, former big league reliever, closer. Get his thoughts, spring training. We've got games coming up at the end of the week. I am thrilled that baseball is finally here. And also get his thoughts on something we're going to be talking about here in the big story in a couple of minutes as well. Chris Myers does a great job, longtime friend of the show, Fox Sports, NASCAR, the NFL, play-by-play for that during the season. He's an author. He has done it all. Chris Myers will hang out with us, talk about Michael Jordan 23-11, Tyler Reddick, the Daytona 500 win for that Michael Jordan-led racing team, and Tyler Reddick winning it, and a bit about NASCAR with him. That's coming up a little later on in the show, and some just general sports talk with he, myself, and Sam Yarnell, who is always here. That coming up a little later on in the program. But we start things out as we always do on this Tuesday edition of the program. It's the big story. And the big story today is as Major League Baseball gets ready to start spring training and hope springs eternal and every team with a chance to win. It doesn't matter where you are in the standings because on day one, everybody's got the same record. And spring training obviously precedes all of that, where fans get to get a look at their teams up close, in person, in Arizona, in Florida. And then this story hits like a lead balloon on Tuesday morning with Tony Clark bowing out as head of the Players Association. Huh? I don't know how many people saw that coming. Obviously, there's a lot of turmoil right now for baseball with talk of owners and teams and even the commissioner wanting some sort of ceiling on where salaries can be. And you have players on their side saying that is our red line that we will never cross. Remember Bryce Harper last year basically shouting Rob Manfred out of the Phillies locker room when he came in for a visit, and the conversation turned to player and owner relations and player and league relations. Now you've got Tony Clark, who's led this Players Association forever, it feels like, saying, I'm done. I'm getting out. Now, there's a lot more to it than just what's going on between players and owners as it relates to trying to get a new CBA done to avoid a work stoppage sometime in the offseason. That this could be the last season of baseball for a while if owners don't get the salary cap they want. There are a lot of other aspects to this story as it relates to turmoil just with inside players associations. We saw what happened with the NFLPA and the investigations that took place of that and the heads that rolled as a result. And could that same thing occur here? Or could those same sorts of investigations be taking place when it comes to the Major League Baseball Players Association? It's something we'll talk about with David Aardsma when he joins us. But what kind of position does this put Rob Manfred in? Not knowing who the next person he's going to be negotiating and who owners are going to be negotiating in terms of trying to get a new CBA done. That's the big question that comes out of this. Who winds up being the next head of the Major League Baseball Players Association? Because if it's not the right person, if it's somebody that's even more, aggressive in their stance about players not taking a salary cap, it could be the difference about whether we have baseball after this year or whether we're heading into a work stoppage next year. Everybody just assumed when the WNBA and the collective bargaining agreement ended at the end of last season, everybody just assumed that eventually they'd get to the bargaining table and get it worked out. That eventually we'd get to a place where WNBA players, WNBA owners, that they would get into a spot where they said, there's no way we could possibly lose games to a work stoppage in this league with all the momentum we have now. From Caitlin Clark to Paige Beckers to the myriad of players that have helped make that lead and propel that lead. Angel Reese and on and on and on. And they still don't have a collective bargaining agreement worked out. You've got Breanna Stewart saying, I'm going to play, in a Euro League tournament. And players are starting to figure out, all right, where's the next check coming from? Because there really might not be WNBA basketball. You've already had an expansion draft pushed off. So everybody just assumes these things will ultimately get done because we haven't had a major work stoppage in a long time, basically since, the one that took out baseball in the mid-90s. Don't assume that this thing between baseball and the owners, because if there is not as acrimonious a relationship in any sport as there is between baseball owners and baseball players. There is not. Just go back and read your history. And owners have wanted to draw this line in the sand for a long time and finally say, we're going to get our salary cap. We're going to get a hard cap. And players have said, nope. And it finally feels like we're at that moment, we're at the precipice of what could be a very ugly labor negotiation between these two sides. And now you don't even know who's negotiating that side on behalf of the players. As we get ready to start a season that should be filled with so much excitement, coming off the Dodgers back-to-back World Series. And I know there's a lot of people pissed off about the Dodgers spending all this money. I find it frustrating, the disparity between the haves and the have-nots in Major League Baseball. But still, there's going to be one team that we're not talking about throughout the preseason and spring training that's going to wind up making some magical run, and maybe they win a World Series, maybe they just make the playoffs, but that's coming because it happens seemingly every year in baseball now, and especially with teams being added via the wild card. There's so much opportunity there, and instead at the start of spring training and games about to begin, what are we talking about? These two guys. That's what we're talking about right now, instead of talking about baseball games. Because yet again, labor disorder is the words of the day when it comes to Major League Baseball. It just can't get out of its own way. David Aardsma is going to talk baseball with us. A lot to get to besides this, and we'll do that next. Welcome back to the show. I've had my say in the big story, and there are plenty more stories to talk about. Baseball is here. Let's go, David Aardsma.
Oh.
It's that time of the year where we harass David Aardsma to come on the show. Former Major League reliever.
Not a great day to be on, though. There's not a lot of good baseball talk. There's a lot of good baseball topics to talk about,
just not a lot of
positive baseball topics to talk about.
It's fine. As long as there is no bad news. As long as there's news in our industry, we're just happy. When I have to sit there and scour a million websites to figure out what we're talking about, that's a bad day. Today,
yes.
The show does itself. Tony Clark, right before, and when I booked this conversation with you, we did not know this was going to happen. Tony Clark sees the sinking ship, decides he's going to jump off it before it hits the iceberg. Man, it's like Titanic when guys are all trying to get onto the lifeboats here. Are you surprised? Initial reaction, because this only came in right before we decided to start taping here. Hello? Are you surprised that
yes,
that he's jumping ship?
I don't think I look at it separately. I don't think it's jumping ship. This is the way I'm going to look at this. We can all easy throw against the wall, jumping ship. We see the CBA coming up next year. The owners playing hardball. Tony Clark isn't one to really scoff at owners. He could really care less what they say. It is an understanding that the investigation with the NFLPA, MLB PA, and that how much of a problem that could be as a discussion point against the CBA. So what he basically did was he sacrificed himself to make sure the union had at least somebody to jump in front and actually lead the charge. Because if this happens in 6 months, if this happens in 8 months, God forbid this happens in 10 months, then the CBA actually really comes up. And now Tony Clark has to step down because of an investigation. Or I actually don't think the union did anything really wrong here, but it's going to cause such a problem it's an easy negotiation for the owners, and they're gonna wipe the union clean.
Wait, real quick, hold on, Sam. Let me just follow up with one thing. If you're sitting where Rob Manfred is,
yes, and
you see this today, are you happy? Are you not happy? What is your reaction if you're Rob Manfred?
If I'm Rob Manfred, understand Rob Manfred's job is to court 30 owners into one boat and get them going in one direction. Rob Manfred's not happy about any of this. I don't think Rob Manfred likes this at all, because it makes his job harder. Because half his, he's going to have a third of his owners in one boat, a third here and a third there, and that just cemented their all positions even stronger, which is going to make it harder for them to come together in one decision. Rob Manfred's job is way harder than anybody else's in the world, because we don't understand how those different owners are pulling in different directions for different things. Rockies owner, Tampa Bay owner might be something totally different than the Dodgers owner, which is totally different than Steinbrenner. They all want different things, and they're all going different directions. His job is just to get them together. Tony Clark's job was to help them get them together in one decision that's benefit for everybody, right? A lot of people think it's Manfred versus Clark. It's not. It's Manfred and Clark together versus owners to get them in one boat. This made Manfred's job way harder. Yeah, Tony Clark and the players are going to have a staunch ground. That gets Manfred's job easier, because at least he knows where the players are. Right now, he doesn't know where the players are, and the owners think they see blood in the water.
So,
some owners think they see blood in the water.
There's obviously a ton of the lockout stuff, and we will get into that on this show and on plenty of shows for weeks to come and months to come. But you said something, and I want to talk about the sacrifice thing, because that's very interesting. But you said something very interesting about the NFL and the MLBPA and all these investigations in the Eastern District of New York. As a sports fan, granted, a sports fan who has intimate knowledge of how these unions work and what it's like to be a part of these unions, what does it say to you as a general American sports fan about these two incredibly strong unions both going through this massive investigation and laying people off, or having people resign, I should say?
It's not good. I don't like it. I don't like anything to do with it. I do understand, so a lot of times a investigation doesn't necessarily mean something is wrong. It just means things smell wrong, and we have to check this out. I don't want to say one way or the other. There's very few people in this world that know the answers of what's actually happening, and probably some investigators and the people in part of the unions. But it's not good. Those union heads and union executives should not be in positions to be investigated, right? They should have the best interest for the players involved, and the whole point is any money comes in should be immediately pushed towards player operations. And if it's not, that's something that puts into question everything that the union is there for.
I guess my other kind of question about the whole sacrifice of it all. While yes, doing it in February as opposed to, like you mentioned, September, October, I don't know, whatever date later than now, is theoretically more beneficial. Do you think that the owner's side of these whole negotiations are going to use, even though it was 8 months ago or however many months ago it was when we get to this negotiating table, do you think they're still going to try to use it as ammunition against the Players Association?
I don't know if they're going to use that against it. It's just a matter of it's an incredibly easily thing to what the players have to have is a strong base. Everybody has to be going in one direction, right? Everybody has to believe in one thing, one idea. That's very difficult. It's not as hard with the players as it is with the owners, but it still is difficult. But when your captain, when the captain of the ship, the whole time is not focused on the direction and is focused on other things, that's hard to get everybody on board and get everybody to believe and say, a lot of the players might just say, dude, just do it. Just fine. I'm sick of so many problems. Just sign deal. And so that's the thing is the quicker he can move on from that, at least the quicker from a player standpoint, that's answered. They can all have a captain and say, all right, where are we going? I just don't know who they're going to go to.
That's what I want to ask you. Who is the right person to take this thing over?
Donald Fuhr.
You want to know something? That was exactly the name I was thinking about. But if you tell me it's Donald Fuhr, then I think we're not going to have baseball next year.
And I'll say this. Nobody likes Donald Fuhr, but he's our guy that nobody likes. I would rather have him on the player side than against you, right? Like he's that guy that everybody hates. But I'd rather have him be our guy.
Oh my God, you're scaring the crap out of me. It's so funny because I literally sat here and I was like, who would be the person? And I thought Donald Fear, but then as soon as I hear Donald Fear's name, all I could think of is my senior year of high school being ruined by a work stoppage and the Expos not getting to win a World Series and baseball leaving Montreal. See the rabbit hole you're making me spin out of control on here?
All the work stoppages have all come down to one thing: salary cap. If they don't want a salary cap, there's no work stoppage.
We're coming back. More with David Aardsma. Welcome back to this Tuesday edition of the show. Coming up in 10 minutes, Chris Myers of Fox Sports. He was at the Daytona 500 for Michael Jordan's biggest conquest as a NASCAR racing owner. Get his thoughts on that. What? No, David. No. We're not going to denigrate Michael Jordan this way. Listen, now you said it, and now I've got to talk. See, you had to do that. You had to bring it up because now I can't ignore it.
Here's
it's like
what
you
it is. We all know
forced my
this.
hand.
Past it.
You forced my hand.
He was just having a little, like, trying to get the kid to have fun, and that's it.
There was a time, and look, you and I are of a certain age. Thank you. You and I are of a certain age.
And then he's trying to get the kid to just put a smile and look back, like, haha. That's it.
There was a time where you could do that sort of thing, and nobody would blink twice.
Because there would be no intent.
Right.
That's the problem. We keep trying to put intent on everything.
Oh, he's grooming them. Good Lord. Yeah. Let's talk about Aaron Judge. I did a sports wrap short yesterday before he had made these comments. These comments came out about him being disappointed sort of in the Yankees offseason and how late they got started in their offseason. They didn't really get started until it was practically spring training.
Did they even do anything?
No, not really.
Hey, well, you know what? We're going to bring back the same team.
We're coming back with this group, and we're adding Garrett Cole. Let's go.
The best free agent sign we can get. Wait. Nope, same team.
Cody Bellinger's back, though.
Hey, wow.
They brought back Paul Goldschmidt.
You're paying him the same amount of money, right?
Bringing back Paul Goldschmidt. We got Paul Goldschmidt back. Let's go. What do you think? What do you think, David?
What do you just keep throwing our head against the wall and expect a different result? You mix something up. Like Aaron Judge, this is the most shocking thing about all of this, the fact that Aaron Judge actually said it. The fact that he opened his mouth, that should send waves across Yankee front office and the owner's box and just hit him in the face and say, he is finally saying what everybody else is seeing and saying. But it's the captain. Imagine Derek Jeter saying something like this, right? There'd be a big meeting, and then Steinbrenner would be talking all bad about Derek Jeter, and then Steinbrenner would go out and sign 5 guys, and like he'd talk about Derek Jeter in his house, and maybe he's getting way too comfortable with his hot wife or something, and then he'd go sign 7 different players, and then it would be a different roster, and they'd make a run for the World Series, but it'd be a better team. My problem is, thank you for saying it. Nothing's going to happen. The Yankees have just kind of become this middledom of not quite there, but really good. And while other teams aren't necessarily passing them, other teams are jumping them, then falling back, then jumping them and falling back. But every year there's a team that has jumped them and a team that is better. And when you have multiple teams in your division, Blue Jays went to the World Series, and you have the Orioles who made huge splashes this offseason. Obviously kind of got slapped a little bit with Jackson with his injury, but you've got huge moves by a couple teams in their own division, and then they basically say, you know what, we're good, same exact team. Let's run it back.
By the way, Yankees second best odds to win the World Series after the Dodgers.
And again, they're still right there. They were a couple pitches away from going to the World Series, right? A couple pitches away from constantly every year. They're a couple pitches away, which absolutely 100%. But did they make waves? Are they coming with the same team who is close, or are they coming with a World Series champion? They're coming with the same team, which is close. And close isn't good enough for the Yankees. And close shouldn't be good enough for the Yankees. And close should not be good enough for Aaron Judge. And thank you for saying it.
Just talk about the Yankees all day. Let's go.
You're exactly right. I mean, I've said it on this show for a very long time, maybe since its inception, but definitely since last October and that absolute, meltdown that they had in the playoffs. The state of New York sports continues to not be good, to the point you've got captains speaking out against their teams and the off seasons they had. Another franchise that is in just absolute disarray, I don't care how you want to frame it, this way, that way, the third, it's the Philadelphia Phillies. Things are going horribly in Philadelphia right now. David, I could ask you about Zach Wheeler and if he's ever going to pitch again. Probably not. I could ask you about Bryce Harper and if he's going to request a trade sometime in the next 5 months. Probably. But what I want to ask you about is Nick Castellanos, who got released while the Phillies still owe him $20 million of his $100 million contract just last week. One of the stories around Castellanos' release was that last year in Miami, he brought a beer into the dugout. Now, I'm curious, David, you've spent many an hour, many an inning, many a game in Major League dugouts, clubhouses, bullpens. Is it commonplace? Was it ever commonplace for alcohol to be consumed just off of the field of play? And do you think the Castellanos situation was slightly blown out of proportion?
So my very first ever outing in the big leagues, I get done, I'm off the field, I'm in the dugout watching the game, and one of the players said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm watching the game. I just pitched. I'm watching." He goes, "Go get in the locker room, go get yourself a beer and go do your arm care, whatever." He goes, like, go have a couple beers, enjoy this. And I go, he goes, "That's the big leaguers. That's what we do. Get out of here." So it's very normal for a pitcher when they get done, go in, you're doing your arm care, your icing, have a beer. That's like classic baseball. I don't even know if guys do it anymore, but that's classic baseball. That was what I was told. Very normal for a starting pitcher who is not pitching that day, for sure not pitching that day, to have a beer or two, but maybe before the game, after they got all their work done, maybe even during the game when they're in the clubhouse watching the game, like not saying any names, some very famous people would be in the locker room charting the game, having a beer or two or 10. But bringing in the dugout, a lot more risque. I know it's happened, but it's not normal. It's not a normal thing. And it definitely isn't normal to go have a beer, sit down next to your manager and start talking about like decisions during the game and what they're agreeing and disagreeing with the manager. That's not normal. After the game, maybe go have a beer, sit down in the locker room and close the door and have a conversation. We got man to man. A lot of managers actually really respect that sort of stuff. You don't have to agree with them. You can very much disagree, but at the end of the day, you have to follow. So like whatever it is, you walk out of that locker room, you're a unit. But while you're in there, you can disagree with stuff. But you have to respect their decision, whatever their decision is. So Robbie Thompson, like whatever you want, you want. Castellanos should have been released without a doubt. You just can't do those things. One, you can't do those things. Two, it's a relationship that was already dying. The moment he got there, it was slowly dying and done. I don't think it's necessarily better for the Phillies, but at the same time, like it's a relationship. You just kind of have to cut those ties. Better for him, better for the Phillies. He was done. He was done there. Still a good ball player, but done there as a player, and a team didn't want him. We're good.
We're going to have more baseball with David Aardsma on Friday, and if you watch Friday's show, you'll notice what we're wearing today will look very similar to what we're wearing on Friday's edition of the show. Chris Myers joins us when we come back. Lots more to do. Welcome back to the show. Good to have you all with us. I promised a Chris Myers, and a Chris Myers I am delivering. The one and only Chris Myers, who does a terrific job and has for years over at Fox Sports. Saw him on the Daytona 500 coverage over the weekend. Does a great job on the NFL throughout the year. He is a man of all seasons, and now he switches into NASCAR mode and baseball as well. So you probably, in your ESPN days, had a chance to cover, in some form or capacity, Michael Jordan winning NBA championships. What was it like watching a Michael Jordan-led team win a NASCAR crown jewel in the Daytona 500, Chris?
Well, good to be on with you, Jason and Sam. It was just nice watching him celebrate. I mean, as he admitted, he felt like he won a championship as an owner here, his driver with a dramatic finish in the Daytona 500. And what makes the story so much more amazing is this is a guy who couple of years ago took on NASCAR in a lawsuit to kind of fight for ownership. It's a complex issue. They ultimately settled, and you see the person. It's not like the NFL where everything. There's the France family and they run NASCAR, and you saw Jim France come over and later shake his hand. So I mean, it was a win upon a win, but it was a win for the fans. And I just think as someone who covers other sports and always has, the fact that you have the greatest basketball, in my opinion, and I think others, a few can argue, sorry, LeBron, Kobe, great ones, but Michael Jordan, when you measure everything, right, the greatest, that he ventured in and grew up a race fan, NASCAR fan in the Carolinas. His dad, so he was a fan that he bought into a team, and then, and this is their 6th year, and kind of laid in the background, but had demands of players and drivers, but to see him do this, yes, I did got to know him a little bit in some interviews in my ESPN days of championships and running with the Bulls, always found him a man who says very little, tough to get to, but when you get to, he's a real gentleman, and he certainly was in this case.
It's almost like Derek Jeter, says a lot but says nothing at all. That sort of thing.
And in commercials you see him, and almost that's enough. One word or two, like, yes, I enjoy this as well, or I love McDonald, whatever it is. But yes, that and he still carries it. It's unbelievable, and I respect the fact too that he, while building this team and being a part of this, he wasn't out front center. It's all about me. He understood his role. I know he didn't do as well in the front office of the NBA and in that ownership part of that, or at least running that, and that's always tough for guys who have such a high standard that they played at, whether it's a Magic Johnson or somebody like Michael Jordan. So, but this was cool. I think this was a great thing for NASCAR. We'll see if his team can stay in championship contention. It takes a lot to build a team. He's got the backing of Toyota. And the irony is that, Denny Hamlin is part owner with him. I mean, that friendship kind of helped build this. And then Denny Hamlin races for a different race team, which is Joe Gibbs Racing, the former great, NFL coach, is the Hall of Fame, all those successful years with then the Redskins, now, of course, the Commanders. So it's a little bit of a different way the sport does things, but this certainly spices it up. And again, the racing was outstanding, and his driver did a great job with a great move at the end, and Tyler Reddick to win.
Chris, I'm so glad you mentioned Denny Hamlin, because he, in the aftermath of this race, obviously, right, talked about wanting to increase speeds at this track. Just kind of give me what your takeaway was being on the broadcast for what was maybe one of the craziest Daytona 500s, at least in recent memory.
Yeah, and the pit stops at the end kind of threw things off. The super speedway racing is usually a draft partner. Somebody could push somebody across or help, and then at the end, everybody goes for themselves. But the last range of pit stops, and thankfully they started early. We were racing. There was rain and threatening thunderstorms in the area, so that you didn't want to have this thing drag out and not be able to finish in time. But I think what happened was a lot of, they start out saying, hey, I'm going to draft with my guy in my race team, or if I'm a Ford, I'll draft with a Ford. Will help each other, and that's why I think it was so chaotic at the end with more crashes. We already had a 20-car crash, or I should say a wreck involving 20 cars. On the record is 23 and 1 crash for Daytona. So that was earlier in the race. So then there was a stretch where they calmed down, and you saw the Toyota teams kind of leading, and Bubba Wallace was out there, Michael Jordan's one of his other drivers, and they were kind of slowing the pace. It was a little bit of a fuel mileage race, and then all of a sudden, late it picked up, which is what you want at the end. And Reddick had to have that move. It looked like Chase Elliott was going to win. I think Brad Keselowski, tremendous story coming off the broken femur 8 weeks ago, had a chance to win. And I think there's still some talk today among manufacturers like, hey, what happened here? Like Ford, hey, we were supposed to, be with each other to help draft. And when everybody went on their own, obviously, you talk about speed, Reddick had the fastest and made the right moves, and other guys got caught up in wrecks. And so there were a number of guys, I think like 10 guys towards the end that looked like they could have won it or thought that they had a chance to win it. So you always avoid the wreck, survive, and then go for broke at the end, and that's kind of what they did. And
it really is a crapshoot on these restrictor plate and these super speedways where it just feels like you have to survive.
That's why you could have even Ricky Stenhouse, right, who's won before and won it kind of in that he was in the mix. That's why you've had 100 to 1, and really the odds were more than that. I think the odds I saw in different places, but 40 to 1 on Tyler Reddick when you had guys like like a Chase Elliott, a champ. You saw Kyle Busch, who sat on the bull. We made a big deal out of that on the broadcast because of the 7 champions of the sport that were in the race. Only 2 had won the Daytona 500 before. That was Logano and Jimmy Johnson, who's winding down his career. But guys like Chase Elliott and Kyle Busch, who was on the pole in a fast Chevy, and Ryan Blaney's another one. And so and Keselowski, and then you've got guys who, this isn't the only win for Tyler Reddick, but certainly he was not one of the favorites going in, and that's what you like about it. Drivers complain a little bit because they don't have as much control. Atlanta, you're going to see a very different kind of race coming up next.
Right. Chris Myers, he's also got a book called That Deserves a Wow. We'll get into that a little bit as we continue. He does a great job with Fox Sports on the NASCAR coverage, the NFL as well. More sports talk with our friend Chris Myers from Fox Sports as we continue. Welcome back to the show. Hanging out with Chris Myers from Fox Sports. Does a great job with NASCAR, also on the NFL during the season. He's got a book, That Deserves a Wow. Talked to him about that book before. How is the book, by the way? How's that book? Have you been happy with the book and sort of the reaction to it?
I don't know how much, I'm guilty too of, we don't read, a lot of us don't read books very much anymore, but those who do, I've heard from a lot of not only sports fans, but people in broadcasting, sports broadcasting. In fact, the book has prompted people ask me to speak at their media classes in certain colleges, the Zooms with students who I think can take and apply it to themselves and in the sports industry. But the audiobook, actually, which I did the voice on, is doing very well, which I think is easier for in this world we live in today of listening in your car or on an iPad, however you travel, whatever, easier to listen to the book and pick and choose which chapters or sports or people you're interested in. So, but thanks for bringing it up.
Absolutely.
I tried to put it together. It's kind of my view of things, and actually most people have had a very good response to it.
My husband says to me all the time, he goes, "You should write a book." I'm like, "Why? Nobody wants to read a book." He goes, "Not because people are going to read the book. It's everything that spins off of the book."
Yes, that's right.
You get a lot of speaking appearances, things like that.
There was some interest about somebody taking this and using a movie. So I tried to do a movie script, like an almost famous in a sports mode kind of thing. But I don't know where that's going. Hollywood has its own pace. But I wrote it because I just thought it was important to document some really. I've been fortunate to be around some great events, highs, lows, and a personal involvement with some really interesting people, athletes behind that you think and or a guy like Bill Murray who wrote the foreword, who built our friendship over the years that, you read and see things about and admire them, and then you get to know them a little better.
One last quick NASCAR thing, and then just a couple of general sports things I want to talk about with you. Can Kyle Busch win again? Do you think he's got one more win in him somewhere?
Yes, I do. And I thought this was a great chance. And I think, he used to have a success. And this is so much a part of NASCAR. It's almost like a quarterback with the team around him, right? A driver, it's the equipment you have. And if you're Hendrick Motorsports, you're going to get, even if you don't win, the best equipment around you. And I know Richard Childress Racing is old school throwback. He's won in the past with guys like Dale Earnhardt. They've been very good at the 500. But yes, Kyle could still drive. I don't think that's, and when he just hit 40, and I think he's got the right temperament. I don't know how many years more he wants to do this, but he's got to end that winless streak. And yes, I think he will this year.
Chris, I want to take you back about 6 weeks ago, the last week of the NFL regular season. You were on the call for the Saints and the Falcons in Atlanta. Now, obviously, week 18, those two teams going into that game, I imagine you thought, well, these are two teams that are going to be out of the playoffs. But then all this research is done in the weeks leading up to this game, and everyone realizes that, well, this game is actually going to decide the NFC South. How did the preparation for you differ from any other or any week 18 game that you've done in the past between two teams that didn't really matter? But for this one, how did the preparation for that kind of change going into this week 18 this year?
Yeah, there was an assumption that the Buccaneers were going to win the division, not only to make, to start the year, but later. And then when Atlanta beat the Rams on that Monday night game, which was a shocker, it also affected the Rams, right, and getting the #1 seed and ultimately helping Seattle to the Super Bowl title. We thought, there weren't as many games on that last Sunday. Sometimes you call games when you've been doing this and you've got teams jockeying for either position in the playoffs or a playoff spot. And when they're out of it, and that's how we're kind of looking. All of a sudden, we were all talking to each other on the crew. Hey, wait a minute. The math, this game is actually going to, and Carolina and Tampa Bay, they can't do anything about it. Whatever happens between them, this will decide who wins the NFC South of all things. And not knowing, again, that Raheem Morris would be fired after this game. The Saints were, just depleted with Tyler Shuck, who I thought was the rookie of the year, and based on what he had to work with. No Alvin Kamara, Olave's out. So yes, the preparation was very different, and it turned into, we know we're going to have a lot of people watching, so we have to constantly not only worry about this game, but update and just remind people of the scenario and why it's the way it is through tiebreakers, head-to-head division, whatever, the simplest terms we could, and still enjoy the game that was going on. And it was a competitive game. It was a very, until the later stages. At least the game was hanging in the balance, which had two franchises and their fans. And I was hearing from them, texting in between breaks of the game. We were all hearing from Buccaneer people and the people for Carolina, and then of course the Falcons win the game, Carolina wins the division, which was a major upset, and then they hung in there. The Panthers did against the Rams in the playoffs before losing.
Can I ask you? You had fun. I'm sure you have fond memories of your time with ESPN. Could you have ever imagined an ESPN Super Bowl?
I remember when I was there in the 90s when we first got NFL, and it was a Sunday night ESPN game, and it was a big deal when we first got Major League Baseball. I've been talking to Chris Berman about some of these things, and working the late Sports Center with Mike Tirico and Linda Cohn. I didn't see it immediate, but it doesn't surprise me because of the growth of ESPN ABC, right, when that happened. That changed the dynamic a little bit, and just the power of the NFL reaching out to so many different, I would say, broadcast entities. But no, it says a lot about not only the NFL, but about ESPN/ABC.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm glad you mentioned Chris Berman, because I'm happy that he's sort of hung around and sort of reinvented himself with prime time on ESPN Plus, and that he's going to get to do a Super Bowl.
Yep, for every network, there are always guys who begin and are the pillars. Bob Lee and Chris Berman were that, and when all the rest of us came along, we admired Berman's fan rah sports guy approach, whereas Bob Lee was the sports journalist and digging for stories and covering the other side of the news of sports. And it really was I don't know if they planned it that way, but an excellent foundation for the network to grow and to expand. And Berman, those are the best highlights ever. No disrespect. And I filled in on those for him a few times.
All the best to you, my friend. Thanks for coming on and hanging out with us for a few.
Appreciate you inviting me, Sam. You guys, Jason, take care. Have a good one. We'll see you.
Welcome back to the show. Just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Tuesday. Tomorrow, Kurt Heelan will be here. Pro basketball talk at NBCSports.com to get us ready for the second half of the season, which begins on Thursday, it turns out. I don't know. Just a monkey reading words off a screen. Before we go, a couple of reminders. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to subscribe to the Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast, available on all your favorite podcasting platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon. Anywhere you get a podcast, you can listen to this show Monday through Friday, 45 minutes, crystal clear audio. It works just as well as an audio companion as it does on television, so make sure to go and subscribe to that. Also, the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. Listen, this is the place for all things Sports Wrap with Jason Page. The Monday through Friday TV version of the show is there. The audio podcast is there. Clips from the show are there. We also have Sports Wrap Shorts. These are 1 to 3 minute long videos which are highlighting the top stories in sports when they break. You don't just have to wait to watch us on TV. If you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, you get my take on all the top stories as they're breaking. We had it happen yesterday with a couple of stories. So make sure to go and subscribe to the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. Sports Wrap Shorts are also available on our TikTok, Sports Wrap Jason Page, and on our Instagram. You guessed it, the same name, easy to remember, Sports Wrap Jason Page. And now, without any further delay, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell, and an interesting development, I guess you could say, with the Miami Dolphins. They make the decision to release Tyreek Hill. Save themselves, what, $22 million, something like that, as far as the cap is concerned. And now Tyreek Hill becomes a free agent as the dismantling of the Dolphins. Little alliteration there. Dismantling of the Dolphins is well underway in Miami.
100%, Jason. Yeah, I mean, this is something that we've talked about on the show for, gosh, over a year at this point. The Miami Dolphins are not in a good spot. Finally, it feels like they're trying to make the first actions to sort of dig themselves out of this massive hole that the franchise has put itself in, quite frankly, with the mistakes that they've made over the last 6 years. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. It was a mistake to draft Tua. It was a mistake to trade for Tyreek Hill. And now you're reaping the kind of repercussions, or you're reaping the repercussions of what you sowed. Finally got that all right with all those moves.
There. You
over
landed
the
the plane eventually.
Years.
It's okay.
It's interesting that it's the first time in Tyreek Hill's carear that he's a free agent.
Isn't that nuts? I said that yesterday.
31 years old. That is a little bit crazy to me. But I think there are so many people, and I'll be interested to talk to people over the course of, on this show over the course of the next couple of months, so many people assuming that he's just going to go to Kansas City. Listen, I get there's a ton of nostalgia there. It makes very little sense from both sides for him to end up a Kansas City Chief right now. So I would not count my eggs in the basket of him being a Kansas City Chief after all this, Jason. And, you know, quite frankly, this is the real question. I'd love to talk to a doctor, and is he gonna play again?
Sounds like it.
How realistic is it for him to play again? The guy's gonna be 32 years old by the time he's healthy enough. It probably won't be any time, at least during this regular season. His leg was facing backwards a few months ago.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think he might be back sooner than you think. From what I've read, it sounds like he might be back sooner than you think. So
even still, when he comes back,
what is he?
Jason,
I get it.
Leg injury.
Listen,
he's a speedy wide receiver. Like,
we saw
what's
Nick
he gonna
Chubb.
be?
We saw Nick Chubb suffer, and again, I'm not saying Nick Chubb's.
Point.
You know, it happens. It just depends how clean these things are. You know, are arteries involved? I mean, it's all sorts of fancy medical stuff that's way above my pay grade. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. I mean, listen. I had to go look up where Lackawanna, New York is. Long story. We'll get to it if we have time here. And I know now where it is, and you definitely know where it is. After I found out where it was, I was like, Sam knows where Lackawanna is. Ronda Rousey. There is rumors, and now they are true. She is coming back at the age of 39. She's going to fight Gina Carano, an MVP, Jake Paul, whole thing that they're going to have going on at Intuit Dome. 39-year-old Ronda Rousey versus 41-year-old Gina Carano. Sam Yarnell, will you be watching?
No shot, but good for Ronda Rousey. She is
the bag.
able to
get that bag.
Right, exactly. Able to line her pockets a little bit more at the age of 39, doing whatever this next failed Paul business venture into the wrestling world is going to be.
It makes tons of money.
Yeah, right. Just
MMA,
wait until
baby.
somebody sues them.
MMA, baby.
But good for Ronda Rousey. I'm never gonna. I've said it on this show a million times when talking about Kirk Cousins. Never gonna hate on an athlete for chasing after and securing a bag, and that seems to be what Ronda Rousey did here, Jason.
Absolutely. Congratulations to Ronda Rousey. She'll get, if the guys can be wash up and get extra
That's
fights,
right.
absolutely. Anderson
Feminism.
Silva's still fighting somewhere. Note from last thing here before we go. Alan Molson in Lackawanna, New York messaged me yesterday. Guess he watches the show somewhere out there. He said, quote, "Are you not able to survive an hour without consuming calories? If the answer is no, why can't you take them in during commercials?" Alan, baby, this one is for you. It's going to wrap it up for us on this Tuesday edition of the show. Thank you to David Aardsma. Thanks to you, Sam Yarnell. Thanks to Chris Myers for hanging out with us from Fox Sports. Hopefully he didn't mind me having a drink or two. That does it for Sports Wrap. We'll see you back here on Wednesday. Bye-bye. Hi there, I'm Jason Page. You like what you're watching? Subscribe. We've got Sports Wrap shorts on this channel. We've got the show. We've got clips from the show. What else do you have to do? You probably follow a lot of other things that aren't half as they're not half as exciting as this show is. So what are you waiting for? Click the subscribe button, follow the channel, watch the content. Bye.